Welcome to Go Big or Go Broke, where you'll learn the method, madness, and making of impactful millionaires. And now, here's your host with the most, Kathy Karabetzos.
Well, hey there, podcasters. I'm Kathy Karabetzos, your host of Go Big or Go Broke. Today, I have with me yet again another special guest, and he has been advising individuals as well as executives of companies large and small since 2005. Beginning in 2009, he called to do something more, even great. Mike commenced that journey in 2015 when he launched his podcast, The Impact Entrepreneur Show. Since then, he's had nearly 200 one-on-one conversations with some of the world's most elite athletes, thinkers, and entrepreneurs in an effort to discover how they're using their personal stories to have a game-changing impact in the lives of others. He makes his debut as an author with the release of a powerful story, Master the Key, a story to free your potential, find meaning, and live life on purpose. The great Lou Holtz referred to it as a must-read. Mel Robbins called it an inspiring story, and others have said it's a fictional story that leads readers to the truth. In addition to writing for Huffington Post and Thrive Global, Mike is also giving keynote speeches for regional offices for major corporations such as New York Life and Keller Williams. Please join me today in welcoming to the show, Mr. Mike Flynn. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Right now in my ears, I hear the roar of the audience.
Absolutely. No question about it. Welcome. And what a pleasure to have you with me today.
It's a pleasure to be here on my 40th birthday.
Happy, and very blessed birthday to you. I feel very honored that you are spending your morning with me. And I see that you're in California, so it's super early out there on the West Coast.
Yeah, it's, what time is it? It's 9 o'clock, yeah. I've been up since 5, so we're the day is midway done at this point.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit first about Mike the Man. Where you were born, raised, what led you down the path that you chose to coach sports and athletes and entrepreneurs in the realm that you are today, and we'll talk about your journey and how you got there. Let's start with you, the man, and your family.
Yeah, so I was born in Georgia. Right. I'm an Army brat. My dad was an Army officer. I lived there for like a hot minute before we moved to Fort Ord in Monterey Bay, California, which is no longer an Army base. It's now Cal State University of Monterey Bay. But so basically have lived most of my life in California. As I said, my dad was an Army officer and served proudly in the military, and then retired when I was about 13 years old and became an entrepreneur himself. And one of the things that goes hand in hand with both being in the Army and both being an entrepreneur is that, fortunately or unfortunately, from as growing up, my dad wasn't around a tremendous amount because, I didn't have the best relationship with my dad growing up. I've always respected him.
Sure. And
it's interesting, growing up, I don't know what your relationship with your dad was like, but I always wanted the light that was my dad, right, to shine on me because, I saw it shining on so many other people because of his roles and responsibilities. I didn't understand that, right? And so we were at odds quite a bit during my adolescence. And then when he retired from the military, he became an entrepreneur, and he was grinding and hustling and putting 6 kids through private school and, doing amazing things. And I still didn't have the eyes to see it. And I had sworn at that point that I would never join the family business, which is a wealth management firm. And so I chose to pursue acting as a career. And I was actually pretty good. I was doing musical theater, and I had experts in that domain who said, Mike, you have a real talent here. Your presence on the stage, your voice, everything, you should really pursue this. And so I was going down that path when my dad pulled me aside as I was about to embark, and he said, Mike, this is a really risky thing. It's going to be hard. You're probably going to struggle. I think you should switch your major and do business.
Interesting.
And it was interesting. And all of a sudden, this light that was on me now that I had craved was shining on me. And so I said, okay, Dad, yeah, okay, I'm gonna pivot. So I ended up getting a degree in public relations and business, and then I ended up joining the family business and have been a partner there for the last 15 years, as well as doing the Impact Entrepreneur Show and writing and speaking. And I say all of that because for a very long time, I'm just turning 40 years old today, as we mentioned, but for a very long time, up until the last 3 years, I held a tremendous amount of resentment that my dad made me take a different path, right? And my identity was like, split because I could have been that, but now I'm this. And so where am I? Who am I? And what I came to realize is that I still made a choice.
Sure you did.
Of
course.
And I can choose today to take with me all of that experience, all of the gifts and talents I had and have for performing, and carry that forward into everything that I'm doing today as a husband to my wife, Lisa, of almost 15 years, as a father to my 4 kids, beautiful, as a friend, as a businessman, as an advisor, as a community member, as a writer, as a speaker. I can take all of those things. Nothing is left to waste. My identity is still intact, and I no longer have to be chained to the lies that held me back for so long.
Amen. And that was obviously very self-created, and also being able to figure that out. What would you say, because it's interesting that you said that the year 40 is bringing you closer to that, or maybe you had a few years in advance. I literally found that my epiphany on my own life, totally different paths and career paths that we took, I'm sure. My dad passed when I was 18, but when I turned 40, literally I was turning 40 within a very short period of time. And there was something that switched on me as well. And I could actually almost remember the date and the time, right for my 40th birthday. And I said, no more. I'm putting all that behind me. I'm owning who I am. And who I am is pretty darn awesome. I'm a mother of 7, so I get that. I've been married to the same man and been with him since I was 17 years old. And it's just amazing to me. It's something about 40 years old or approaching the 40th year that there's something there. I'm very faithful, and I read a little bit about you and your faith. I believe that has a lot to do with it. So tell us more. How did you figure out, approaching your 40th birthday, that this was, I need to own it. My resentment needs to go away. And how did you put that away?
Well, I got to go backwards again a little bit to answer that. So I joined the family business in 2005, right after I got married to my wife, Lisa. And I joined the business on 2 conditions. One, that my dad would not give me anything, that I had to build my own practice. And that when at certain occasions that I would invite him in to help me with business when I needed it, right? And so I was very successful right off the bat. In the first 3 years of business, we're in early 2000s, and I'm very successful. I married my childhood sweetheart, had a bunch of money in the bank, bought my first house in California, the esteem of others, accolades, awards in the industry, all of this stuff, right? And then the financial crisis happens. And over the course of 2008, 9, and 10, I nearly lose everything. My health goes in the tank. My marriage is stretched. My finances are all but dwindled completely. And I end up short selling my house in 2010. I go from having 2 kids to 4 kids. In 2011, I'm diagnosed with male postpartum depression. So all of this stuff starts becoming my identity, right? And meanwhile, I'm still I'm still going to church. I'm still praying. But I'm going through the motions, right? And all of this stuff is happening to me, right? And in 2011, right after I was diagnosed with depression, I went to a mastermind meeting that I had organized this group in 2007. We're all second-generation advisors from around the country. And I went to this meeting in 2011 in Seattle with the intention of telling these people who I love that I was leaving the business, that I was burned out, that I was done. And then the guy that was hosting that meeting that year, named Jesse, he's 6'8", but we call him Yoda. And he gave us all a copy of a book, the author of whom, to bring it full circle, wrote the foreword for my book. And I never understood the power of words, the power that words have in our subconscious when we understand their origin, their etymology, and their meaning.
Sure.
And so we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts per day, men and women. And men, the average man only gives life to about 7,000 of those thoughts. Speaks about 7,000 words, basically. I'm probably above average. I probably maybe speak 10, 12. And then the average woman speaks 20,000 of those thoughts. So there's still a huge difference. And where those thoughts aren't going anyplace, they're staying stuck in our head. So most of our conversation is happening in the quiet of our mind, and words matter in the secret of our mind, right? And so when I began to understand the meaning of words, the origin of words like courage and passion and sincerely and, a multitude of other words, I started to change the way that I spoke to myself.
Sure.
And one of the questions that this guy, who's the author of this book, asks is, if I spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would we still be friends?
That's a great question.
And I was like, no, I would not be friends with me, And that was kind of the catalyst for me. And then I started to really seek spiritual direction. I started to seek therapy for my depression.
Sure.
And I've been seeing the same therapist now since 2011. Once a quarter. I call her my mental health coach. And then I started doing CrossFit, which also reminded me that I'm effective. See, there's this concept called, and you can tell me to stop at any time, but because otherwise I'll keep going. But there's this concept, this psychological theory called self-efficacy theory. And we all desire to feel effective,
of course,
and powerful. But the reason why many of us don't take on challenges and risks and adversities and obstacles is because it threatens our sense of efficacy, which is funny because many of us feel stuck and ineffective anyway. And so we want to be effective at being ineffective and taking on something challenging or that might threaten that comfort zone. It threatens our sense of power, even though we're not doing anything powerful. So one of the fastest ways to trick your brain and to take ownership over your efficacy is doing something physically challenging, moving your body and your mind in time and space at the same time, and reminding it who is boss, and that doing something hard, you're not going to die at the end of it, right? You're sure. Maybe a hard workout, but you're still going to be alive.
That's amazing. I love that. Who taught you that?
The self-efficacy thing, there's another guy, and he started an organization up in Seattle. And I've not been to that, but I read his book, who created self-efficacy theory. And self-efficacy is all about building confidence. Everybody wants to build confidence, and people think that confidence is an outcome that we arrive at, but it's not. When people think about that, what they really are saying to themselves is, I want to feel comfortable doing X. But confidence is always about being uncomfortable. Yeah. The word confidence means with faith, right? So unless you act with faith, you will never live with confidence.
Amazing.
And so it's an ongoing process of moving from I think I can to I know I can to I did, right? And building those blocks over and over again.
And being physical, and in your case, doing the workout regimen that you had prepared for yourself, that prove that to yourself. That theory was proven by being physical.
Yeah, physical. And then you take that same proof, right? And you take that to every other area of your life.
Love it.
Hard conversations with yourself, hard conversations with others, your business relationships, your mentoring relationships or your mentee relationships, your relationships with your children. The other thing, just to be really honest, my wife and I practice something called natural family planning, which requires us to have hard conversations.
Sure.
It's a form of regulating family planning and without using anything artificial. And it's there are periods of time where it's really challenging, but it enables us to have hard conversations, which draws us deeper into a relationship with each other. And we could talk about money. We could talk about anything because we can have hard conversations about sex. And that's really, really challenging, right?
Yeah.
So that's all to say that when you do something, you start at the fundamental building blocks of the fact that externally we can relate to who God created us to be. We can see ourselves, right? We can see and feel how we look, our heads, our bodies, right? So that is a great way to begin to go deeper with yourself, to quote St. Augustine, to return to yourself, for deep within you dwells the truth. And once you crack through the surface of who you are by reminding yourself that you're effective, that you're powerful, you will discover the truth that already dwells within you, the gold that has been living in your veins because of the adversity and the earthquakes in your life, and you will be able to draw it out.
Incredible. Let me tap back into, for a moment, if you would let me, the time that you came forward, you figured out this is who you are now, right? You're no more resentful. How's your relationship, by the way, with Dad today?
He's great. Yeah, he was actually, like, I guess, guest number 150 on my podcast.
Definitely go and listen in on that
one. Yeah.
Sure. So your relationship is great and it's growing, and so the business is, it sounds like business is doing well.
Yeah, we've been in business for over 30 years, and my dad and myself are the two primary advisors. My mom works with us. My wife's our director of operations. It's truly a family business, and they're very supportive of all of the gifts that God's given me. In terms of my real passion is to help people reach inside of themselves and draw out the insight that God's already placed inside of them. There's this great proverb that says that the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters, and one with insight draws them out. Too many of us fall victim to the lie that some external guru is going to provide us the insight. But the reality is that we already possess what we need to gather that insight. And that's kind of the core tenet of the book, Master the Key, too.
I love it so much. So for those who, there's, I'm sure, plenty of people that are going to be listening to this that maybe not as faithful, maybe not so much as reading the word, but knowing that there's a book that they can go to and start listening to a man like you and how you tapped into it, and the realization that we are created to be everything. We are actually created perfect. I have the faith that we're created in his image, so that's fabulous. But I think it's really super important that we're able to articulate that to maybe non-believers at this time, obviously shining in our own light and sharing our walk and our wisdom. So thank you so much for sharing that. So bringing it forward to today, you're coaching amazing athletes. At what point did you determine these are the entrepreneurs, the type of people that I want to coach and help in the world? Let's maybe start with athletes.
Yeah. Well, so I've had athletes on my show, but I'm not coaching any athletes specifically, but I've done a lot of advising and to corporations and entrepreneurs at various levels through our business, and sitting around the table with many family businesses and listening to the challenges and the emotions and the visions and the goals and the aspirations that are shared, but also unshared. There's typically you have a situation where you have the founding generation has a vision for the business, and they have their frustrated second generation sitting at the table because they have a vision too, and it's different than the ones that their parents have. And how do we bring the two together, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, most of them have the same desired outcome, which is all about legacy. So it's about having hard conversations, emotional conversations. A lot of the work that we do ends up kind of being like therapy,
like a business therapy and how to get this to the next level. I love it.
And so what I do a lot now too through the Impact Entrepreneur Show and platform is I go to organizations and I teach them how to free the potential of their people by becoming a personal development company, regardless of what their product or service is, that in order for their company to fully realize its potential, they need to help their people remember their own. And one of the things I say to them is that when you underestimate someone's potential, you undermine your own.
Interesting. That is intriguing. So when you're working with clients, it sounds to me like maybe you have a specific niche and maybe you don't, but is it more about legacy? Is it more about wealth building? Is it more about exit strategy? Is it all of the above through that? Well, why don't you just go ahead and describe the commonality between your guests and your interviews?
Yeah. So I have had the great privilege, like you, of interviewing some of the brightest minds and hearts on the planet. Everybody from Lou Holtz to Jocko Willink to Christmas Abbott to Caroline Burkle to, entrepreneurs who are just getting started. And the one thing that they all have come to realize through most people through force and adversity and responding to it, but some people just naturally, is that our purpose is not fixed.
Sure.
Our purpose is something that is fungible, that's fluid, that we have one core purpose, which is to give something, but the way that we express that purpose will change. And so, a great example is you look at like a guy like Jocko Willink, who spends his whole entire career as a Navy SEAL for 20 plus years, I believe, and a great leader. And he could have just, retired then and probably done anything else he wanted to, right? But instead, he decides to start a consulting company and carry forward his experience, good and bad, the failures and the victories, the triumphs and the tragedies, and share them with the world. You have a gal like Caroline Burkle, who's a bronze medalist in swimming, right? You have her experience and the challenges that she had. Imagine this. You spend your whole entire life from the time you're a little kid to your 20s pursuing one thing, thinking your whole purpose is about getting a gold medal. And then you make the big stage and you still medal, but you fall short. Many professional athletes struggle with depression at the end of their time as a professional athlete on that stage. It's because they feel like that purpose has ended.
Sure.
And what many of these people have come to realize, not immediately, oftentimes over time, is that they can take their experience and their giftedness and express it in a new way. One of the main characters in the book Master the Key is a violin player, and she loses the ability to play the violin at one point. But what she comes to teach Steve, the main character in the book, because it's a parable, is that she learned that if she loses the ability to play the violin, she doesn't lose the ability, she doesn't lose her gift. She just needs to express it in a different way. And so that is the primary common thread that most entrepreneurs, athletes, coaches share, is the ability to adapt, to respond to the various impact moments. That's why the show is called the Impact Entrepreneur Shows, because they've had an impact moment and they're now using their platform to have a game-changing impact in the life of others, and they're building a business around that. And most people don't respond, they react, right? And a lot of times we need perspective in order to know how to respond. And that's why communities like the one we share with the Be Fulfilled community are so important. That's why I'm sure you have your own mentor-mentee relationships. That's why having spiritual direction is important, mental health coaching, physical coaching, so you don't hurt yourself while you're doing these hard exercises. And so that other people can help you see what's possible.
Of course.
Can I share an example how that happened, applied to me in my own life?
I would love that.
So, earlier I mentioned that my dad, when I was growing up, was an Army officer, and he was, as a result of that, he was gone, 5-6 days a week, typically home late at night, but I was in bed and didn't get to interact with him much. But my best childhood friend's dad, Earl, was around, right? And so he kind of became like a second dad for me. And we would go on adventures and go water skiing and stuff. Well, when I was about 14 years old, on a Friday night, Earl was picking up pizza from a local video and movies from a local video shop when we had, VHS? Videotapes. And he was driving back, and he was killed by a drunk driver.
Oh, my.
And I still drive by that same corner where he was killed every day, because it's 2 miles away from my house. It's directly on my way to work. And so I drive by that every day. And until recently, I never saw that spot as a beautiful place. I only saw it as the place that Earl died.
Sure.
What happened for me recently, and I live in a beautiful part of California called Santa Cruz County, and it's the whole Monterey Bay Peninsula is the salad bowl capital of the world. We've got strawberries, apples, you name it. Most of your vegetables come from this part of the world. But so I'm driving around this corner, and on the opposite side of the street, looking back toward where Earl was actually killed, was a man painting the landscape, painting the hills and the clouds and the apple orchards and the red barn. And I pulled over to look at it from his point of view.
Wow.
And now for the first time in decades, I see that as a beautiful place.
Amazing.
Because of someone else's perspective.
That is such an eloquent description and example of how we can use mentors and coaches. And
you don't even have to have a relationship with them.
You just don't know where it's going to come from. And
right.
That's what led me really to do my podcast, is knowing that we all have a unique voice and that we need to be heard. And it might be one impact you're going to make in this world, that one person that needs to hear your story. And that was so impactful to me when I heard that. I said, I have to do this. And I knew I had to do that. And I set out a year ago to launch my show for that reason. And it was since then that I've met the likes of Tony Grebmeyer and Vinny Fisher and Jeff J. Hunter and now Mike Flynn. And I'm so blessed to have so many people that understand the power of impact by others.
Yes.
And experiences. So it's such a joy and such a pleasure. I could listen to you telling your story literally all day.
Mm-hmm.
This is amazing. I do want to touch on, and I'm really sorry to hear about Earl, and that is just horrible, horrific. But look how you're able to look at it now, and what a blessing.
Yes.
There was something that I read. You have the 6 bridges of personal growth and well-being. Would you mind sharing that with our audience? Because I think it's so super important that it's there's so many ways that we could grow in our own well-being. Could you share that with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. The 6 bridges, they're all Fs. They're all Fs to keep it fun and memorable. And in the book, I call them the 6 caves, because I looped in a little bit of Joseph Campbell, and the cave that you fear to enter is where the treasure lies. But originally I came up with these 6 bridges of personal growth and well-being, and they are faith in this order, precise order, okay? They are faith, family, fitness, friends, finances, and fun.
I love it.
And for me, it's your faith. It goes beyond just having a faith in God.
Sure.
It goes deeper. It includes having faith in the fact that you have unique skills, gifts, abilities, stories, experiences, life lessons that no one else has. Right? And if you don't have them yet, that you can go get them. And so there will be, just like every highway, every bridge has different spans. And sometimes they're really, like the Bixby Bridge along the Big Sur coast is this iconic, gorgeous bridge, and it's beautiful. It's not very long. But then you have the Golden Gate Bridge that's super rigid and strong and long and iconic as well. And then you have your little dinky little bridges in your little towns that you cross over and you never think about again, right? And then you have some bridges that are dilapidated and falling apart and that you drive by and you're like, oh, somebody really needs to pay attention to that, right? So the 6 bridges of personal growth and well-being, and I actually have a PDF workbook that I created that I'd be happy to share with your audience.
Love it. Comments and notes. I love it.
That people can go to these 6 areas, and they can look at their current reality as it relates to their faith, for example, and they can say, what's going well? Why do I like it? What don't I like about it? What top activities or beliefs do I need to adopt to change it? Or excuse me, in the current reality, it's what top activities or beliefs do I think are holding me back from living my desired reality? And then it moves, in that workbook, it moves directly over to the desired reality where you're creating your future, because we are created with this really powerful brain that not only can reflect on the past, and I want to talk about that in a moment, but can forecast into the future.
Sure.
And we can begin to envision and see and re-engineer the steps to achieve our desired reality. In order to achieve anything that doesn't exist yet, we have to take steps or actions or adopt new beliefs in order to receive that, right? And achieve it. But here's the real kicker. You've heard Jim Rohn, you're the average of the 5-person people you spend the most time with, right? Well, I extrapolated on that and created something called the Future 5, which is like a multiplier, because in each of these 6 areas, there are 5 people in your sphere of influence right now that are already living the desired faith life that you want, the desired family life that you want, the desired fitness level that you want, friendship level that you want, finances and fun level that you want, right? So it's beyond, it's like 5 to the power of 5, right? And when you
interviewing all my Facebook friends and family, that's it. We're going to interview every one of them. I need to know. Oh,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's people have so much treasure, and believe it or not, people are sitting around waiting to be asked.
Absolutely truth. Absolutely truth. No question about it. I think that another reason why I launched this podcast again is because I think that people do need to be asked and people do need to be heard, and they just don't even realize it. The power of being asked the question and then releasing it all into the earth is so amazing. So you said you were going to hit back on one of those points.
Oh, yeah, reflection. So this is a very important piece of Master the Key. So the key in the book, the key represents our identity, right? And our identity is made up of 4 pieces. The key is made up of 4 pieces: our story, our giftedness, the action that we take, and the community we take it with, right? So in each of those areas, we have to reflect on how we've been living our life, and it all starts with story. So most people want to think about the future. How am I going to create the future? Well, you have to know where you've been so that you can know where you are, so that you can see where you're going. And the word reflect literally means to bend back or direct light or heat onto something. The reason why people don't like to reflect on the past is because they think they're only doing it passively. But when you actually do something with intention, when you and I intentionally hold up that flashlight and shine it on that dark thing, we're the ones directing the story. We're the ones that are directing the energy. We then have the power to go back to our efficacy, to carry that thing out into the world and give it away in the service of others. We have the ability to take a dark thing and make it a light thing through the power of reflection.
I love it. And that's a great work, I'm sure. And I can't imagine how you've worked with others to go through that entire process. It's brilliant. So it's at this point in the time in the show that we love to think about maybe some practical ideas or tips, because there's going to be our audience listening today, Mike. They're saying this is an amazing conversation. There's so much to learn. First and foremost, we're going to leave it with tell us where everyone can find your book and you and how they can reach out to you. But before then, maybe a couple of takeaways that our audience could say, listen to Mike today, and these are some practical tips or ideas that I could take away too, for me to maybe be reflective, that I too can go big in my life, in my interest.
Yes.
Love it.
The first practical tip that every single person can do is to go do something physically challenging. Okay. We all, regardless of our level of success, we all fight with the desire to feel effective. Regardless of one's level of success, we all have a desire to maintain our level of efficacy and potential. The word potential means power, right? And potential is power unused. And so we want to use our power effectively. And so everybody needs to go do something that's physically challenging, but not just like on the treadmill, right? Something that actually requires both your it's so intense and so challenging that it actually requires your cerebral engagement.
Okay.
There are psychologists have discovered that we basically have 3 speeds of thought. We have our awareness, which is the fastest form of thought. That's when we're kind of got a 360 thing going on, right? We have our attention, where we're looking, and we have our mood or our energy, how we're feeling, right? And you've experienced this. You've got 6 kids or 7 kids, right?
I do.
And your daughter is playing competitive soccer, right? So when they are winning and she's crushing it, how fast does that game go?
Fast.
When she's not playing well, how fast does that game go?
Not slower. No question.
Same time, right? Same time. It's about the energy and the mood, right? And so what ends up happening is when you're doing something that is so physically and challenging that it involves your cerebral activities, your full awareness, attention, and mood and energy so that you don't do harm to your body, all kinds of new neural pathways begin to fire in your brain. So if you want to achieve what you thought previously unachievable, go do something physically challenging. Climb a mountain. Go do CrossFit. Go surf. Go learn how to do something different with your body, right? That is going to be a practical, tangible way for people to remind themselves of what they already know, that they already possess every single thing that they need to be powerful and effective in their world. They don't need to buy another course. They don't need to go to another summit. They don't need another book, even though I want them to buy mine.
Sure.
They already possess what they need.
I love that. Yes, I love that.
So that's one practical thing.
Sure.
And the other practical thing, because immediately following that is to go get quiet. Because as a result of your neural pathways firing on all cylinders, you are going to be able to create and see things that you've never seen before.
Incredible.
And so go do something incredibly physically challenging and then buffer in 30 minutes to an hour to just walk and think creatively, make digital notes, take that idea that's been in the back of your mind that you've been stuck with and haven't been able to create, but you know it's there and you need to get it out. This is the way to do it. It's to break the external to get to that gold. God leaves clues for each and every one of us around nature. And I live in California, so we have a lot of earthquakes, right? And so what I just discovered recently is that in almost every case, whenever there's an earthquake, a vein of gold is instantaneously deposited in the ground. And you would only know that if you go underneath the surface and mine it, right? If you break the surface. And we need to do that. We need to do it first physically so we can get the veins of gold that are in our brain firing on all cylinders. And then we need to do it in an exact opposite way by getting silent.
I love this so much. Well, if this doesn't change a whole bunch of people, if they will apply it, because I bet you I'm going to, and I'm going to follow up with you and share with you my findings after I either go climb.
I would love that. I would love
it as well, because I think it's super important. I think it makes perfect sense for me. I love the fact that you left it with that God leaves clues in nature. I think that's true. And I would love to hear how people can take this experience and actually apply it and see what their outcomes are.
Oh, I guarantee you it'll change their life. Well, it won't be Mike Flynn. It won't be Mike Flynn that did it. It'll be them.
I appreciate that, and I think it's super important. This show, I'm gonna focus on hopefully getting it not only to our entrepreneur audience, but I want some kids to hear this show. I'm going to start at my own family because I think it's super important message today. This is amazing. I could literally stay with you for hours, but I know we have to wrap up a bit here. So how can our audience find you, and where can they find your brilliant book, and where can they get more of these amazing tips from Mike Flynn?
Yes. Well, they can find me on my website is theimpactentrepreneur.net. That's my website. That's where my podcast is. That's where some of the articles I wrote on The Impact Entrepreneur are featured. Then I've also written for Thrive and Huffington Post, and most recently Addicted to Success and CEO World. One actually an article I encourage everybody to engage with, I'll send you this if you want, is the 3 types of mentors that can derail your success.
Just as know that as it would be who can help you, right?
Yes, totally. And then my social handles are at The Impact Mike. And I'm happy to engage with anybody. I love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories. I just love people because I just feel people, you know. And yes, thank you. Sure. And then they can get the book, of course, on Amazon. Just type in Master the Key and my name, Mike Flynn, and it will pop up. And if anybody is looking for a speaker for their next event, they can also reach out to me on my website and we can begin a dialogue about that. I have a demo reel up there, which has been endorsed by, the former editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine and sports psychologists and people from major Fortune 500 companies. And I am trying to gain more exposure in that arena. And because I believe that we're in this really challenging time right now. And you've probably seen it in your own organization where we have 85% of the workforce is actively disengaged. And it's not because the company's vision, mission, and culture is wrong. It's because the people that are working in those organizations don't understand how to develop and cultivate a vision, mission, and culture for their own life.
Sure.
And you and I know how to do that for people.
Sure. I love it. It's brilliant. And I think you need to be heard. So I would be sending that link as well. If you anything you want on speaking engagements, send the links and we'll have them in the notes as well. It
Awesome.
is an absolute honor and privilege to have you today, Mike. I could, again, listen to you forever, but we'll follow up. I will stay in touch. I'll definitely see you inside the group and be fulfilled. And Tony, thank you for our intro to Mr. Mike Flynn. I really appreciate you being with us today, Mike. Thank you so much. And to you again, a very blessed and happy birthday.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be with you. I'm glad that we finally were able to do this. And I love the energy and the joy and the light that you share with everybody on social media. So thank you. And congratulations to you on everything that you've accomplished.
Thank you so much, Mike. And we're going to be challenging and cheering on each other for sure. I'll continue to look forward to that as well. Thank you.
Yes.
So much. Well, hey there, podcasters. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please subscribe to the show by clicking that big red subscription button. Rate the show and share it out to your friends so they too can go big. I am Kathy Karabetzos, your host of Go Big or Go Broke. And you can find me at kathykarabetzos.com on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Have a grateful day, and don't forget to go big.
You've been listening to Go Big or Go Broke with Kathy Karabetzos. If you enjoyed this episode, then you better play big and hit that subscribe button.